Hi, everybody. My name's Jay Agner. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. We talk to founders about, you guessed it, how they got their first customer. This episode and every episode is sponsored by my company, JDA-QA Software Testing. We're your one-stop shop for manual, automated, performance, and security testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name's Jay Agner. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ezra Cohen, the founder and CEO of Lucid Circus. Hello, Ezra.
Hello. Hi, Jay.
I'm very glad to have you on today. You have a very interesting story. Former Philly guy. You're now in the Czech Republic, right?
True.
All right. So I did peek a little bit at your LinkedIn. I won't give away any of the cool stories yet. But one of the things I did notice is that you studied glassblowing, or you did glassblowing in college, which I thought was really cool. It's always been an interest of mine. But let's start back at the beginning. You're from Philly. Where in Philly are you from originally?
I grew up on the outskirts, within Philadelphia, but on the outskirts. It's Mount Airy.
Okay.
If you're familiar.
Yep.
West side.
West side, West Philadelphia.
Yeah.
All right. There have been a couple West Philadelphians.
Yeah. So I grew up there, and then I went to high school at Central, if you're familiar with Central.
Yep.
And then I moved to Center City, and I lived there for about 10 years. I worked and I went to school at the University of the Arts, which is where I had the chance to do some glassblowing. But I originally went for animation. I saw, it all started when I saw the Dire Straits video, Money for Nothing, that one.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind. Like that, you could do that with animation. Like, I want to do that. So I went to school for it, and after a year, I decided it wasn't actually for me. It really hurt my back, and because he spent like 70 hours to do a 20-second pencil drawing animation.
Right.
I could do something else with my time. So I got into sculpture. I did metal sculpture all through school with some other extracurriculars like the glassblowing, but mostly sculpture.
Okay. Wow. What kind of sculpture?
Well, I tried all the different materials, as you do when you're learning. I tried plaster and wood and glass and stone, and I found that all these things break. So I wanted something that was not going to break, and so I got into metal. And so I found myself doing artisanal blacksmithing. That was the niche.
What does that mean? I saw that. What does that mean exactly?
I guess mix Pottery Barn with goth aesthetic. So I was making functional candelabras, 5 feet tall, and metal furniture, that sort of thing.
Now, do you do any of that today? Do you enjoy any of that stuff today still, or?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Running a business probably prevents being in the blacksmith's apron and all that stuff, I would assume.
Yeah.
So I did see the transition, but walk me through, kind of tell me the story of how you went from sculptor guy to the digital transformation, I guess, you made yourself.
Yeah. So the way it came to be is I always, at the time, I envisioned myself, that was my life. I was going to be this artisanal blacksmith guy. But once I was out of school, I had no studio space, no money for supplies or equipment. And so that was a bit of a rude awakening. And I got together with my best friend at the time, who had the same aspiration. And we said, okay, how about we figure out how much money we have now, and then project how much money we're going to need to actually have a realistic start.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking about rent and supplies and all that. So the first thing we did, we tallied up how much money we had at the moment, which was $7 between the two of us. So we said, okay, we're going to save up. So my plan was to work for 6 months at an art supply store,
mm-hmm.
and also do graphic design, because I knew how to do that stuff. And after 6 months, I'd go back to doing the sculpting. Turns out I really enjoyed, actually I'm skipping a step. So I started doing a graphic designer, and then after a week of that, I discovered the web. This is like 1994. And seeing images on the internet blew my mind. I'm like, not only are there images that are not ASCII, but they also can move. My first animated GIF was in 1994. So I really needed to know how that was done. And so I locked myself in my apartment for a week, and I came out a week later saying, now I am not a graphic designer, I am a web designer.
Wow.
And so from there, I hit the street. I tried every business on Walnut in Center City, going up and down saying, you need a website. And the answer was always why and what. So no luck there, but eventually, just by putting the word out, I was able to get some business. And then I got hired by a design agency, Monsoon Micro Studios, very cool space. There I met Jim and John. One was a broadcast graphics designer. The other was a traditional print graphic designer. And we decided to do our own thing. And we became Lucid Circus in 1998. And so there I was the head of web. They were the head of the other design focuses. And we presented ourselves as doing cohesive design across all media.
And that was still in Philly, right?
Yeah, this was Center City.
Okay.
This was pre-dot bomb. Of course, the dot bomb was very formative. We got known in Philadelphia and New York for doing Flash, animation, and also experiences, like building applications in Flash and then Flex later. So yeah, we were like in the Macromedia 5 Flash Bible, very proud of that. And then the dot bomb happened, and we had to close down the office, and all the employees went away, all the partners went away, and I found myself just working out of Rittenhouse Square with a laptop and a phone. And after a few months of that, I realized if I'm going to be doing that in Rittenhouse Square, I could be doing that in Prague. And that's how I got the idea.
So I haven't really talked to anybody about, the .com, .bomb bubble. What were your thoughts when that happened? Did you think, it was kind of a reset? Did you think things were over? Like, what was the kind of lived-through experience, or somebody who was so deeply embedded in that space at the time?
Right. Well, it was terribly confusing because pre-dot-bomb, all the advertising agencies around the world were telling their clients that if you invest $1 million in this new www thing, you'll get $1 billion back. Huge ROI, gold rush.
Right.
So a massive amount of money was pouring in, and agencies like ours cropped up like mushrooms, and we're getting crazy money for HTML and Flash and graphic design and whatever. It was wonderful. And then suddenly the spigot just turned off, like everywhere. Like we worked with a lot of agencies in New York and a bunch in Philly, and just nobody had any work. Everything was just frozen. And all the PMs, the project managers, were saying, hold on, we got a huge pipeline. Don't worry, everything's fine, because they didn't know what was happening either. And so this went on for 9 months. And so companies like ours, I'm sure we're not unique at all in how we weathered the event. We took out lines of credit. We're like, we got to hold on to our guys because the work is coming. But just after 9 months, we just couldn't do it anymore. So we gave up, and then that's when we downsized to just me.
Wow. I'm sure we could probably do a whole hour on that, but let's move forward. So you were sitting with your laptop, you realized you could be anywhere doing that, and that was what time? That was the early 2000s?
Yeah. So I guess I just step back a moment. Right before I started Lucid Circus with my friends, I went to Prague for a month. My first real vacation, not counting Canada and Mexico. Spent a month there. It's awesome. It's everything anyone's ever told you it is. And then I went back, got Lucid Circus going. That was great up until a point. And then I guess around 2002, I got the idea that I wanted to transition from Philly over to Prague. So it took about 2 years to get all my ducks in a row. No more office, no more rent. I had enough savings, and there was like a lull in the business. So like, okay, now it's time to go. Now it's 2004, and I went.
So how did you pick up the pieces after everything kind of hit the ground in the 2000s? Like, what was the rebuild process like for you?
It happened in two different ways. When I arrived in Prague, I didn't have a plan other than I was just trying to shake trees and get some business because I didn't really know what I was doing. Because as I said, I reached a lull in the work. I had been pursuing AOL for a couple of years. And after I landed in Prague, one of the PMs reached out to me and said, "Hey, we need a little bit of flash work. Can you handle it?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, definitely." Finally, AOL. So just did some small projects for AOL, and then bad for them, great for me. They laid off 700 people from their office in Virginia, which is where they were getting all their production work done. They still had all their PMs in the New York office who were now desperate to finish these projects.
Right.
And so they passed my name around the office, which was awesome. And I said yes to absolutely everything they threw at me. And to handle it, I hired everyone I'd ever known in Philly who did Flash. And luckily, we were kind of like a hub for Flash guys back in the day. And everyone, my friend Adam, the one who lured me to Prague, he was doing the same thing as me, but in Prague. So everyone he knew, and we just worked around the clock for the better part of a year, working on Netscape and AOL. So made a lot of money. It was a lot of stress because New York PMs are insane. So I didn't sleep much for that year. Didn't get to experience Prague too much, but so after that wound down, I was burnt out. And I moved to Olomouc, which is like moving from New York to Philadelphia, or something along that scale. It's like 1/10 the size, but it's like a tiny Prague. And I loved it, and it amuses me every time I have this thought, but it looks very European. It is Europe. So it's got a lot of like monuments and stuff like that. So yeah, if you can imagine Prague without the tourists. And for about the better part of 2 years, I didn't try to work. I tried to recover from that experience. And while I was doing that, thank God, the people that I knew from the 90s, like clients, and like throughout, I did a lot of networking in the 90s. Do you know Panama?
I think we talked about this before, maybe, but
Philadelphia area New Media Association.
Yes. Okay. Now, yes.
So,
yes.
Just a bunch of geeks getting together, drinking, and it turned into an organization. So I knew a lot of people from there, and old clients and old connections started writing to me saying, "Are you still alive? Do you do this thing called WordPress?" Yeah, sure, I could do that. So by this time, Flash was pretty much dead on its last legs. And so I transitioned to WordPress and other open source CMSs, Drupal and the like, and just focused on that for a while. And just by, and from there I grew organically, meaning whatever people asked me to do, again, I would say yes to. So from open source transition to enterprise level CMSs. And along with that came a lot of middleware. So we got into custom software development for the web and for mobile. And then after about 10 years of just focusing on the dev, got back into doing the front end design again. So we do a lot of UX UI work because that's our origin story, as well as like post-launch digital marketing stuff. So went from doing simple WordPress blogs to now we're like full service over the course of like 15, 18 years.
So it sounds like you said yes to a lot. Have you gotten to the point where you say no to stuff now?
I guess sometimes. If it's about the tech stack, then I'll generally say yes, unless it's just something so esoteric that I just can't find somebody to do it. Mostly we just look for red flags. Like if there's just not enough of a discovery, and the client doesn't want to like pay for discovery, this sort of thing, where like if they're demanding a fixed price and we just have no way of giving them a fixed price that covers our asses, then I'll say no.
Right. So you have been able to at least start to, over the years, cobble together what those red flags are, right? I mean, that's kind of, I mean, it's such an interesting story that you made so many pivots and so many changes by having to say yes just out of necessity, that a lot of times it'll bury you if you keep saying yes to everything, but you seem to have been able to shift and pivot enough and kind of morph whatever your business is into what was popular at the time. Very interesting.
And that's kind of where I am now, because I don't know about you or people you've talked to, but people that I've talked to in a similar with a similar agency, similar size, and similar dev shop as me, at Q4 of last year, everyone seemed to have experienced a slowdown, serious slowdown.
Yep.
So that just put me on edge, as well as everybody else. And so since the normal pipeline just wasn't flowing, I was thinking, what can I do differently? Like for a long time, I've been a generalist, as you point out, just saying yes to everything. And that was working for me. But then when things just stopped, I think, what can I do differently? So now I'm trying to niche a little bit, get into some niches. So the two that I settled on, one is Adobe Experience Manager. It's an enterprise level CMS, which requires a lot of middleware development. And we just finished up a decade-long project working on with one client, and they had all their clients, and so that was great. And I wanted to replace that scenario. So that's one thing, and then also I want to get into Web3 more, just because it feels like it has like the same sort of excitement as Flash did back in the '90s. So I'm all for joining the hype wagon. So I'm going to some conferences. I'm going to Belgrade tomorrow for.
I saw that. That looks cool.
Yeah, it's close by.
I love, but yes, to your question / point, I have heard and did experience the slowdown in Q4. I think everybody was a little jumpy with everybody saying recession, and then January, February came around, and everybody I've kind of spoken to said March and April have been, and for us, it's been much better. Things got kind of back on track, and I think people feel like they're, it's still a little timid, it feels like, but it's definitely, the floodgates are kind of starting to open back up, at least from the folks that I talk to that run the dev agencies. So if you had to start everything over with your vast amount of knowledge and experience and your pivots and your changes and all your stuff, you had to start all over tomorrow from square one, what would be your first step?
That's a big question. Like, if I still had a dev agency?
Yeah, if you were gonna start Lucid Circus, that's what I should have said, over again tomorrow. Square one, no employees, no nothing, no business plan, no model. What would be your first step?
Well, I guess what is most interesting to me now, besides like the blockchain stuff, is also AI. Of course, you get hit with AI every 2 seconds on LinkedIn. Here's what I'm doing with ChatGPT today. So the most interesting projects that we have now are a combination of Web 2 and Web 3, so Web 2.5, with some AI kickers in there. So just for the buzz and also to be hip and now. So just because that's what's up in the air at the moment, I think that's where I'd go. I would focus more on that.
And as far as a business perspective, just from a raw, tactical, is it a business plan? Is it market research? Is it, reaching out to some people in your network? Like, what would be kind of your first step to kickstart Lucid Circus from a business perspective, if you had to start it all over?
Well, I'll tell you what I've actually done. As you can remember, there was a pandemic recently. And so networking kind of changed. I wouldn't say it went by the wayside, but it changed. But starting last year, I went back to my roots, back to networking IRL. Because that's what I attribute all of my success to, is networking in the early days. And so I returned to that. I went to conferences, going to parties, industry parties. And that's been working for me. So I've just been kind of just putting it out there into the universe, what sort of projects I'm interested in, and word gets spread around the ether, and I end up talking to the right people, and the pipeline is filling up.
And how to somebody who hasn't done the networking thing and kind of just you hear it so much when you're coming up, at least I think this generation, maybe the previous, got beat over the head with networking in college and in high school. Just network. Like, where would you point somebody that has never really networked before, that's come out of college, that's starting a business? Like, where would you say they should start?
Well, things that I've found that have worked for me is to join some online networking groups, like CEO groups, web dev shop owner groups. And so you kind of make friends there in a social media sort of way, in a virtual way. And that can then lend itself to meeting in real life, because people are putting on more events, or you just there could be like a meeting channel in Slack where people say, hey, I'm going to this event, and then whatever people you can meet up with them.
Right.
So I guess I'd start virtual and aspire towards the real life, and just attend events that you're actually passionate about, so that passion comes across when you're having coffee with the guy next to you, between, and then you make friends and connections from there, and then that'll pay off dividends in the future.
I think it's a great point. The passion part, I think, is just important in general. And somebody I had on the podcast recently was talking about marketing, and actually it was the one that launched today. Dave Ashworth was saying, to be better at marketing, do the things that you enjoy doing. Right, like if you're not a writer, don't struggle to write blog posts to make content. If you like making videos, then make videos. If you like going and networking, then network. Like, do the things that you find joy in, or at least the ones that you're not, that aren't painful, and you'll be better at it. So I think that's the passion point's a great point. So give me 3 health tips that you're doing to increase your longevity as a business owner, as a family guy, as a human being. Like, what are you doing to stay in shape and stay healthy, and increase your longevity?
All right, good question. Approximately 10 years ago, my wife and I aspired to start a family. And so I was thinking that I needed to get into shape. So I started going to the gym regularly. It's been about 10 years of just physical activity, not being on my butt so much. So there's that. And then I don't know if I watched it because I was interested, or I watched it and I became more interested, but there's a documentary with Chris Hemsworth about longevity. That was inspiring to me, anyway. So he goes through like a series of different ways to increase your longevity. One is cold therapy, so I'm not terribly into, but could be proud of doing it a little bit. I've tried microdosing because I stopped doing heavy drugs a while ago. I've stopped drinking alcohol, except a little bit. So in terms of diet, less alcohol, less coffee. That was a hard one to do because, of course, growing up in the web dev business, you drink a lot. I am what's called a flexitarian, so I'm mostly vegetarian, but not strictly. What else do I do? I've thought about meditating. Haven't done it, but I thought about it.
That's part of the battle, is just thinking about meditating. You got to get on the meditation train. Those are all great things, by the way. Those are all fantastic. I think just being active is like the biggest thing. Like active and rest to sleep when you're, after you are active is the biggest things for me. All right. So, mystery question time. What is one thing you would do, anything in the world, if you knew you couldn't fail?
All right. I like that question because I've had an idea percolating in the back of my mind since I left school.
Okay.
Because as you know from my previous story, I was expected to go back after 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked me if I did sculpture now. The answer is no, other than I just fooled around with some clay and I did some drawings, but I should go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
As I lost motivation to actually do art, and I just saw my future in the digital world, I had the idea that maybe when I retire, I could open up a studio, like a mega studio, mostly for hot things, like glass blowing, a kiln for clay, and of course a forge for the metalworking. Create a space with all the equipment, all the things you need to get it done, and then open that up to poor students like myself back in the day who didn't have a place to go and continue doing art. And it can be open to amateurs or professionals or what have you. And that's what I would like to create.
I love that. That is, well, obviously that's a first. I haven't had anybody say that they want to open up a blacksmith / glass blowing studio. That's awesome. I love that, and I love that it kind of throws back to the days that maybe you wish you had something like that available. So that's cool. That's kind of like the ultimate give back. Well, this has been great. Let's end it here. Where can people find Ezra Cohen and Lucid Circus if they're looking for Web3 / not Flash or Flex anymore, but anything more modern? Where do they find you?
Yeah, now it's HTML5.
HTML5, Web3. Just throw a number behind it, and you got Ezra and excited about it.
That's a good point. GPT-4. Lucid Circus. Just put that into LinkedIn or your web browser. Not Lucite, not Lucidity.
We gotta. Oh wait, let's. You gotta give I asked you this the first time we met. You have to give the meaning of the name Lucid Circus before we leave. I'd love to get that.
Okay, that's a good way to wrap it up.
Yes.
So my partner John, he had a freelance business when we were working together at the design agency. So he came up with the name Lucid Circus for himself, and even had a really awesome tattoo of the original logo. So we were trying to come up with names for our new enterprise, and we couldn't come up with anything cooler than Lucid Circus. So John said, "Here, just take my name. We'll run with that." So a circus is a lot of exciting visual information, and lucid means clarity, So the clear presentation of exciting visual information.
Love it. That's such a, and I love the way you describe it. That's such a cool. Does it say that anywhere on the website that it's a clear picture of?
I should add that.
It sounds so crisp. I love the way that you put that. All right. Well, people will find you, Lucid Circus, Ezra Cohen on LinkedIn. It's a pleasure, my friend. When you're back in Philly, please let me know. We'll grab a beer, or I don't drink either anymore. I always say grab a beer. So let's grab a soda or something. Let's grab a Diet Coke or a club soda next time you're in town.
Yeah. Speaking of beer in Philadelphia, I didn't get a chance to tell you my foodery story.
I know. We skimmed past it, but you're the guy with a tight deadline, man. So if we'll do a second episode. I'll have you back on. You probably have a million other stories. I loved all of them. I'm jealous that you're over in Europe. I think that's the coolest thing ever, and just a stand-up guy and an awesome story. So thank you for coming on today, Ezra, and we'll catch up again soon. All right.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, buddy. See you, man.